Uh, Okay, all righty.
You want me to call John Dwayne, John?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Okay.
But I don't want to keep Scott and Kurt too long, so I'll turn the meeting over to you. I have sent out copies of the three warrant articles and look forward to learning more about what's behind each of them.
Kurt, do you want to start here or should I jump into the slideshow?
I would just jump right in, Scott. Basically, what we kind of have is an overview that really targets the warrant articles. I know this particular board has much greater interest in some of the details of the overall watershed plan. So kind of, what Scott's geared this to is more the specifics on the three articles. But in his slide deck, he's also got other information in there. So to the extent that you want to dive into anything else, we will be presenting to you again at some point, as regardless in terms of the overall plan. But that's just sort of a background. We can answer anything that you've got an interest in, at least with this deck.
Okay, great. So you don't mind if we pop up with some questions?
Not at all. Not at all.
That's why we're here. In fact,
Yeah.
please interrupt me along the way. And John, thank you so much for letting us present. It's really nice to meet you. You and I have had a lot of back and forth, and you've helped me tremendously in terms of providing information, developing this plan. So I want to thank you in advance. And later, if anybody can tell me where this picture was taken from, I would love to know, because I acquired it from the Cape Cod Commission. I just thought it was a nice picture. I do believe it is in Wellfleet, but I've been unable to kind of identify the exact location. So I'll keep using it until somebody tells me it's not from Wellfleet. And then
It's Wellfleet. It's standing on right on as Herring River enters the harbor.
I was kind of thinking it was near the Herring River somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's actually standing on what you see on the left is the bridge that through which the water flows, and Herring River flows into the harbor.
Well, very good. Thank you for confirming that. Now I'll be less worried about it. And as you can see, the wastewater committee has changed their name. The select board voted, I think, just the other night to change our name, or their name, to the Clean Water Advisory Committee. We think that's a better lingo. We learned that at a Shellfish Advisory Committee meeting, where the shellfish people told us they didn't want to be in the business of treating wastewater with their shellfish. And we said, good point. That was never our intent. Our intent was to assimilate the nitrogen, which those guys want to eat anyway. So we listened to them and we changed the name. And I think we're off and running in a good direction. So as Kurt said, we only have 6 or 7 slides here. This is a literally 7 or 8 minute presentation. We can go hours if you want us to, but let's say maybe somewhere between 7 minutes and hours will be appropriate depending on your questions, but I'll gear this towards 7 minutes, but stop me along the way. So first of all, I'm really thrilled to be working with the town of Wellfleet on this watershed plan. And as you can see, to me, it's a lot more than simply the first 2 bullets, compliance with the Clean Water Act, which all 15 towns in Cape Cod have to do, and obviously water quality. But there's more to it in my mind. And I think the wastewater committee, now the Clean Water Advisory Committee, has a lot of good input. And that is, let's design a plan that has quicker results. So you'll see that some of our recommendations are so-called technologies or strategies are either in water or near water, because as we all know, groundwater moves slowly, 1 foot per day. So if we only focus on septic systems, it could be 5, 10, 20 years out before we see results. And for many of us, that's too long. Reduce costs. Obviously, everybody's interested in costs, and I think we have a plan that's about maybe 25% of the cost of a traditional approach, and we'll get to that later. I have to say that I've been really excited about the connection we've made with the affordable housing group in town. Gary Sorkin and others. We've had many great conversations, and I'll be talking about the 95 Lawrence project briefly, but I can honestly say that this plan, I think, will not only promote water quality, but has a great opportunity to, provide for affordable housing. Co-benefits are always key. Jobs, local jobs, shellfish, landscaping, construction, septic system installation, all of that is focused on our plan. Instead of bringing in maybe an out-of-state firm to build a large structure, our plan focuses on people that live in the town or nearby that can implement probably 95% of these solutions. And then we are also very sensitive to climate change impacts. For those of us who believe in sea level rise, that's what the data suggests strongly. That's an issue, and our plan focuses on that as well.
And,
So
and
here's
one other, Scott, I didn't want to
Please.
interrupt you, but regarding the local jobs, I
Yeah.
did want to mention one thing. We had a very good meeting with Jay Norton at the DPW yesterday. And Jay is very interested in getting much more involved in both the water and wastewater issues and beginning to incorporate or think about how to incorporate those into the DPW. And the interesting thing is that they do have the capability to manage the vast majority of what we're considering in the wastewater plan. So that's kind of a news flash. It's to be developed, but we had a very, very good meeting there. And just to emphasize the climate impacts, which I think are probably important for this committee, but pretty obvious. To the extent that we're not building or trying or minimizing the construction if it's required of a traditional wastewater treatment system, the pumping energy and all of the water dislocation elements that go along with moving water from one watershed to another watershed are largely eliminated with this plan. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. And clearly the town meeting last year did vote, in fact, to require that with any major project that is being considered by a department or by a committee, that climate change impacts be considered. And we clearly want to let people know we are doing that.
Thank you, Kurt. So this shows a geographical survey of many of the elements in the plan, and I'll work sort of as the hand on the clock works. I'll start lower left and work myself clockwise. So this plan involves, John, to your credit and others, the Mayo Creek project, which we believe will have a benefit in terms of nitrogen reduction. It includes a permeable reactive barrier, which I'll talk a little bit about later if we have time, along Commercial Street. We think there's a very unique opportunity to install a low-tech solution along that low-tech and I think relatively low cost to intercept a lot of the nitrogen in the groundwater before it gets to the bay. And again, that's right at the water line, so we should expect to see some pretty quick benefits. Herring River is next, and as you all know, that's been on the in the planning mode for quite a while. And John Portnoy deserves a lot of credit in my mind for that project. I started talking to John about this, I think about 25 or 30 years ago. And that will come to fruition. And not only will it have tremendous ecological benefits, but it will reduce a lot of nitrogen going into the harbor. I think, as most people know, the town has engaged GHD Engineering, and they've completed a report that shows that the transfer station, if needed, can certainly support a full-scale wastewater treatment plant. I'll just digress for a minute and suggest that while we've been working on this plan, we've been coordinating this very closely with Mass DP, and we have a very good, I think, productive relationship with them. They've pretty much told us that they're very open to, let's say, a non-traditional plan, including many of the things I'm talking about, but they want a backup plan. We use a collection system, wastewater treatment, and we need to show them we have a place to put it. And that study that I mentioned by GHD has proven out this site. So the good news is that if all else fails, we have a backup plan that DEP will get behind, and that's good news. And that's related to these downtown sewers. these areas that are colored right there in the downtown area. Again, as you all know, the town has engaged with a couple of prior engineering firms, Woodard and Curran, as well as environmental partners, who have identified through a pretty lengthy process some proposed potential sewering areas if the town decides to do that. And that is part of our backup plan. And again, I'll get to that later. The 95 Lawrence project is, I think, a real highlight in this project because we're, as I said in my last slide, this is an opportunity to provide affordable housing, which every town on Cape Cod and every town in Massachusetts needs. But at the same time, because of the plan that we've developed, thanks in part to the group in Wellfleet, Gary Sorkin's group, who's been very progressive and open-minded on this, as well as the Cape Cod Commission, who funded a very good alternative engineering analysis. We've come up with a plan that will not only provide for that affordable housing, but mitigate some existing impacts from municipal properties, as well as the neighborhood. And then finally, stormwater projects. We're working pretty actively with Mass DOT, as again, I'm sure you all know, there's a project at the intersection of Main Street and Route 6 where the state's going to spend a very significant amount of money. We want them to add a very insignificant additional amount of money to provide some nitrogen attenuation as part of that project. And I'm confident that that can happen. And then I'll just mention the other thing that we'll talk about in a minute. This little symbol down here, IA, refers to innovative and alternative septic systems, which is really at the core of our plan, as I'll get to. But before I do that, let me focus in closer in the town center area, because there's 3 projects, and this will lead to really the focus of tonight's discussion, and that is the town meeting articles. We feel that of everything we've proposed, there are a couple of 3 projects that really highlight and drive the program here. And one of them, as I mentioned before, is this permeable reactive barrier, or PRB. This line traces along Commercial Street. Each one of the dots on this plan represents a septic system. The larger dots are intended to represent larger flows and larger nitrogen loads. And as you all know, this is the town center, where there's the highest density. The groundwater flow in this area is from northwest to southeast into Duck Creek and then out into the cove and the harbor. So this is a very big, significant part of the nitrogen load. The nice thing about Commercial Street is aligned sort of perpendicular to flow. And if I can oversimplify it, really what the intent here is to provide a subsurface filter for the groundwater that has a lot of nitrogen in it and intercept it before it gets into the harbor or Duck Creek. Now I'll just mention Eastham has just built one of these. I was on the phone with their engineers for about 2 hours earlier this week. They're getting about 90% removal. Orleans has installed one of these. They're getting about 80 to 90% removal. And there's a couple of them in Falmouth that are getting the same removal rates. So there's a pretty good track record for these kind of programs. And that's one of the 3 articles on town meeting to provide the engineering design for that. John, sure. Yeah,
A
please.
little bit more about what PRB is and sort of what the cost is per yard.
Yeah, so let me, John,
What's on my mind is not only can it be used for the harbor, but we've got a couple of members of the NRAB who live on the ponds, and it could be
Yep.
very useful for ponds issues as well.
Absolutely. So I just fast forwarded to some of our Q&A slides here,
Okay.
anticipating some of these questions. And this is a couple of cross sections that shows how these PRBs work. There are a couple different varieties. The traditional one is on the right here, which is a trench in the ground, an excavation that gets filled with something like wood chips. And the wood chips provide a carbon source for the bacteria that naturally occur in the subsurface. They start growing and intercept the nitrogen and turn it into nitrogen gas. As you can see from this slide, those are depth limited in terms of how deep you can dig the trench. So another technology which they've employed in both Eastham and Orleans, instead of a trench like this thing over here, they're installing a series of wells. In this case, not wells to withdraw water, but wells to inject carbon. And the carbon source in this case is a vegetable oil. And the nice advantage of this, you can go to pretty much any depth you can to drill the wells. And you're absolutely right, John. This technique can be modified to not only restore water quality in coastal waters, but in lakes and ponds as well. So that's basically the PRB approach. And hopefully that answers your question for now.
Could you tell me what the oil does? I don't understand the relationship of
Sure,
the
sure.
carbon
So
to
absolutely. So vegetable oil has a lot of carbon in it, as do wood chips. And the bacteria that are in the groundwater, they're called nitrifying and denitrifying bacteria, are limited, meaning they want to grow more, but they need a nutrient. And the thing they want most is carbon. So it turns out not only wood chips, but vegetable oil has a lot of carbon in it. So they use the carbon to basically as a food source. And instead of producing urine and feces as we do, they produce nitrogen gas as their effluent, if you will. And so it really works out quite nicely. They do this naturally. I'll just take an aside here. I do a lot of work with the Nature Conservancy, and using their term, these are nature-based solutions. So these ideas come from people going into places like the forest or a wetland and studying what is going on in those areas. How come a wetland or a forest doesn't export any nitrogen? It falls out of the air. Where does it go? They metabolize it. They use it within the ecosystem of that habitat. And so basically both these technologies are really modeled on that idea. Let's help out the bacteria that are in the groundwater by providing a carbon source. In this case, either vegetable oil or wood chips.
one other question.
Yep.
Over a period of time, do the wood chips have to be replaced or the
They-
oil have to be replaced?
They do. Excellent question. Absolutely. And the answer is absolutely yes. I'll start with the wood chips. There's a researcher at University of Waterloo in Canada who is, in my opinion, and many people's opinion, the global expert on this technology. His last name is Robertson, if you want to Google him later. And he's been studying these technologies for about 30 years and has been telling us that we ought to look at this. And we started paying attention about 5 years ago. And he's right. And he did a study to answer your question. And what he found out was he installed the wood chip system for wastewater treatment and found out after 20 years that used up 3% of the wood chips. So 97% remains. He can't accurately project how long they'll last because it's not a straight line projection, but clearly we're talking 50, 60, 70 years. And for the non-believers, you can go to the Witta Museum in Yarmouth, where they dug up that old ship, which we all know about. And that's been sitting in the ocean's bottom for quite a while. And that's carbon. And so as long as it stays wet, carbon lasts a very long time.
And will continue to function.
What's that?
And will continue its function. not only remain-
Exactly. So, I mean, my guess is we're talking 50 years plus on the wood chips. The oil, it's actually more than a vegetable oil. It's actually an emulsified vegetable oil product called EVO. And those people who are providing that as the injection method are suggesting that longevity is around 10 years. And it would need to be re-injected on a once every 10-year period.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
You're more than welcome. Great question. Let me go back here. So here's the PRB. Here's the 95 Lawrence project, which is basically a neighborhood wastewater treatment collection system. And then we've got the Route 6 project I already mentioned. And then we have the INA septic upgrade. So let me just spend a minute on the INA innovative and alternative septic systems. And I will add that I just got off of a 4-hour call with EPA, a workshop on this subject on INA, which was continued from last week where we had two 2-hour calls. both attended by about 80 people in Massachusetts, including all the upper level Mass DEP people. So the reason I'm telling you that is because this is of very high significant interest statewide right now. And what I'm showing you here in this picture is, first of all, a septic tank. And I'll just skip over to the leach field, because those two components is what a Title V septic system is comprised of. The septic tank is designed to remove solids. They then generally flow directly to this thing, a leach field, to get the remaining water into the groundwater. Innovative and alternative septics place a structure or treatment system in between those two facilities, the idea being to provide additional treatment. Now, there are probably about 10 or 12 general approved, so-called innovative and alternative, and if it's okay, I'll just say I&A systems on the market now. The problem is that they only work marginally well. In fact, just to put numbers to this, a standard Title V system, according to the Mass Estuaries Project report for the town of Wellfleet, produces around 23 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. The I&A systems that have been on the market for the last 10 or 15 years reduce that to 19. So that's a pretty small reduction from 23 to 19 at a pretty significant cost. It's better, but it's expensive. The good news is we have at least 3 or 4 new technologies that we are referring to in our plan as not just I&A septic technologies, but enhanced I&A. And they are getting reductions down to around 5 milligrams per liter. So just to say that again, a standard Title V is 23. An older I&A is 19. The new ones are getting down around 5. So a very significant reduction. They are in the process of going through the Mass DEP approval process. They have already succeeded at pilot approval, and they've already succeeded at provisional approval. So they're 2/3 the way there. We now need 50 of these systems in the ground statewide for a period of 3 years to achieve general approval, which means they'll be going in everywhere on a regular basis. So our plan suggests during the first 5 years of the plan, and it is a 30-year plan, piloting these systems because their performance is very, very good at a very low cost. We can come back to this, but that's a quick introduction to the enhanced I&A technologies. And I'll mention again, back to your question, the crux of the system, again, is a carbon source. It's wood chip bioreactor. This is a tank filled with wood chips. It also has another tank in here, the aeration chamber. It's filled with limestone, which is designed to neutralize the pH, increase the alkalinity, which helps the bacteria be more efficient at removing the nitrogen. And again, the test center, the Mass Septic System Test Center out there at the MMR facility in I don't know if it's in Bourne or Sandwich, has these systems in the ground, and they're again producing a 80-90% removal down to around 5 milligrams. So the progress is quite good.
And I just wanted to add one thing there too, Scott.
Yep.
This technology, it's very similar to PRBs are basically working the same as something like this. The difference is this is obviously treating septic from a household. There's not much you can do for groundwater that's already in the ground other than something like a PRB. So that's really the distinction between the two technologies. And the other thing I'd point out is that this particular system, these systems now, that removal rate is the same as a wastewater treatment facility. So there's really no difference between the removal rate of an enhanced IA or a standard wastewater treatment and collection system. There is one subtle difference though, and that is that John Todd has done some research in the past from his New Alchemy Institute and then later at the University of Vermont, where he was working with similar kinds of systems and trying to use natural means of breaking down things like cadmium and arsenic and other heavy metals and contaminants of emerging concern like pharmaceuticals and that sort of thing. The Silent Spring Institute recently did a study on, contaminants of emerging concern, and did find that even regular Title V systems, because of contact with ground, had some effect on breaking down contaminants of emerging concern. So there's not a lot of research at this point on the extent, but my suspicion is that we'll find that these actually do a pretty decent job. A wastewater treatment plant, on the other hand, concentrates those compounds. So it's, from that standpoint, these do a much, much, much better job of protecting groundwater, especially drinking water.
Yeah, it may be a stupid one, but has anybody figured out a way to take a Title V and include some of this development into it to make it upgradable to these types of things? Or is it, if you five, you got to just redo it all?
No, that's a great question. And the quick answer is yes. One of my other clients, the town of Barnstable, we have a neighborhood in Barnstable called around Schubel's Pond. And we're working with US EPA, Office of Research and Development, the US Geological Survey, and the Nature Conservancy. And we're doing exactly what you're suggesting in a very highly dense neighborhood, about 10,000 square foot lots, similar to some of the downtown areas in Wellfleet. We are going in as part of that project and retrofitting existing lots. We're basically, we're essentially trying to put one of these tanks between two existing tanks in leach field. Now, it's not linear like it shows in this picture. Sometimes it's off to the side. But if we can find a place to put another tank, and this tank here is about the same size as a standard 1,500 gallon septic tank. So it's, if you can imagine, basically finding a spot on the lot to put that system and then repipe the wastewater. So instead of going directly from the septic to the leach field, it's going through this intermediate chamber. That's what we're doing. So the answer is absolutely yes. The idea is retrofit existing lots.
So I think thinking about the article that's on the town warrant, I think what you're saying is it's worthwhile the town taking the risk. You have enough confidence in this that it's going to work, that's going to put us a step ahead in terms of meeting the requirements from the state.
That's absolutely right, John. And the risk, if you will, these will work to some degree. They're going to remove more nitrogen than a standard Title V. So it's not a risk of not doing anything. It's a risk of exactly how much credit the town will get for these systems. And by doing this, you will be partnering with the town of Barnstable, the town of Falmouth, the town of Tisbury, who are all also putting these systems in to get to the magic number of 50, which is what the state requires. Currently, there are 18 of these in the ground. Barnstable is putting 10 more in this year. So that brings us up to almost 30. So if we can get another 20 in the ground, which is essentially what the town meeting article in Wellfleet would do, collectively, there'll be enough systems, and then we'll know the magic number. And every indicate, like I said, every indication is this system's going to do way better than the 19 milligram per liter systems. My best opinion is a number to plan on, which I have in our plan, is about 7 milligrams per liter. John Smith, the developer of this system, keeps arguing with me, saying, "Scott, I'm showing 2 and 3. Why are you using 7?" And I said, "John, I need to be conservative here." I also have in our plan that if it's the other number, which is 11, which is kind of a more conservative number. So either way, the 7 or 11 is much more cost effective than the alternative wastewater. And we're not, keep in mind, we're not committing the town to doing this for the full 30 years. We're asking for the town to appropriate enough money during this town meeting later this month to put a limited number of these in, get some experience with them. The town already has a whole bunch of INAs in the ground. So this is not a new thing. Unfortunately, they don't work that well. We're suggesting instead of keep putting in more and more of the existing IAs you have that don't work well, put these in, because every indication is they work much, much better. So after a few years of doing this, we will all know, we'll have the data. The people at the Mass Tech Center, Brian Baumgartel, who runs that facility, if he were on the call, he would raise his hand right now and say, wait a minute, we already have the data. What are you talking about? We know these work. But again, more data is better. So that's the plan here. The plan is
And-
to, yes.
Yeah, and just one other idea too. The one thing that has gives me a lot of angst is that we're right now the town of Wellfleet is putting about 60 new Title V systems in the ground every year. So we're really digging the hole a lot deeper as we go forward. To the extent that we don't, Laura, as you said, start to address this issue. Can you retrofit? Can you do, what can you do to sort of accelerate getting these things in the ground? Everything that we can do, I think, protects our, helps protect our drinking water and obviously protects the watershed better than anything else that we can do, especially in the short run. So in my mind, this is kind of a no-brainer, and it's a big money saver to the extent that you don't have to go dig up. I just saw one on, where was it? Commercial Street, the old pizza shop, where Paul Suggs put his gallery in. They just put in an IA system, and I'm just shaking my head. They spent a heck of a lot of money on something that really isn't going to work that well, and they're right there on Duck Creek, and that kind of stuff just drives me nuts. So the sooner we address this issue, the better for everybody in town, and the less expensive it's going to be.
Does anybody have even a ballpark? Anybody have a ballpark estimate on the cost of retrofitting a Title V system?
I do, yes, I can speak to that. First of all, I will say that the actual cost is very lot specific and site specific. And that's because, and we're learning a lot about this in the Barnstable project. So for example, one homeowner who's doing a retrofit has a relatively newly constructed expensive shed at a location that we need to move. That adds about 10 grand. So there's a plus or minus 10 grand for starters. Another one has a very expensive English garden that they want to rebuild. Estimated cost of moving it, 15 grand, believe it or not. That's what they told us. So there's a lot of site specific, but I will tell you that the marginal cost of the system is $12,500. That's what it costs for the treatment system. The other costs relative to excavation, landscaping, moving things is variable per the site. Now, you're asking a question which gets to one of my future slides, and that is the way we are proposing this program is not to suggest that the town require everybody to do this ASAP. Rather, let's wait until the homeowner comes to the town and asks for a permit, meaning a new home, or they want to add a bedroom or two, or they have a failed system, they need to fix it. In all of those cases, they are digging up the lot, they are doing landscaping, they are higher engineering, they're doing permitting. So my view is all of those costs are, going to be incurred anyways. And if we design the program that way, the marginal cost to the homeowner is the treatment technology. And the proposal we have here is the town actually provides that cost to the homeowner. So in reality, the idea would be that this program really would not cost anything, or if anything, marginal, very low cost, additional cost to the homeowner, because for a new home, they're going to be putting a septic system in anyways. And adding a bedroom, they have to expand it. They have to dig up their lot, increase the leach field size, etc. So that's the approach we're taking. I will add that earlier this week, I had a 2-hour meeting with the Cape and Island Realtors group, including 6 realtors in the town of Wellfleet. And we discussed this at length. And I think, I don't want to speak for them, but I think that they were quite comfortable with the approach that we're taking here, because their interest obviously is they don't want to impact the homeowner. more than necessary. So the answer to your question is the marginal cost is $12,500. And by the way, that
I like the technology, and I like the idea that people are willing to participate in a trial. I just think in implementing this, you have to be careful that the risk is not excessively borne by the homeowner, I guess, or at all borne. I can't say at all because that'll never work, but
well, no, I agree, John.
Borne by the town, not the homeowner.
And
Right.
that's kind of why we propose this way with the 12,500 as assistance to put in the what we'll call the black box. The
Yeah,
homeowner is really only spending the same amount that they'd spend to put in a standard Title V system. So we've really kind of risk reduced this substantially to the homeowner.
Actually, even more than that, that I've been working closely with Hillary Lemos, and
Yep.
there is an existing health reg in town that basically says if you're within 100 feet of a wetland or 100 feet of a well, you have to put in an INA system at your own cost. And a regular INA system is about the same, 12, 13, 14 grand. What we're saying is if you put an enhanced INA in, we'll give you the 12.5, and that's about the same cost. So comparing in those cases, not only are we reducing the costs, we're actually, it's almost like one of those deals where you say, come buy a new truck and we'll give you $12,000. That's essentially what we're doing here. I'm saying, put a system in, you got to put an INA in now anyways, that's going to cost you an extra 12 grand. If you put in an enhanced INA, which is the same cost, yes, you have to spend the extra 12.5K, but we're going to give you a check for 12.5K. So in those cases, I think it's more than a break even deal. And that's exactly how it's designed. It's designed as an incentive to make this sort of an obvious, yeah, why wouldn't I do that kind of a
Okay.
decision.
Let's
I
move
just
on.
got a couple more slides here,
Okay,
if I may, and then you guys are asking great questions. We had a Q&A period planned, but you're asking all the great questions up front, which is fantastic. But let me just talk about costs for a minute. This is capital costs of the plan over 30 years, which is our planning period. That's the planning period by which DEP will give us a permit, the town a permit. And on the left, option A is the plan we're recommending, which is the non-traditional plan. You can see the enhanced INA, the 95 Lawrence, the PRB project at the top of the list. But we also have stormwater fertilizers, the salt marsh restoration projects, some shellfish, which I've been working with Nancy Chavetta on, etc. This column represents the cost of that program over 30 years in millions of dollars. So that totals, let's just call it $30 to $60 million over 30 years. This column represents the approximate breakdown in percentage, and you can see that the way this is designed, that by and far the largest component is the enhanced INA program. Over on the right here, we have the backup plan, if you will, the alternative plan using sewers. Now, the 95 Lawrence project is in here, but then obviously the town would need more than that to meet the required nitrogen reductions. Those costs are estimated between 150 and $200 million. I will add those costs are based upon current actual costs from Orleans, who's in the process of constructing a sewer, Barnstable, Mashpee, and Falmouth. I basically looked at all four of those programs. They suggest that the average cost of putting in a sewer per home or per connection is between $75,000 and $150,000. The INA system from scratch is around 35 grand. From scratch meaning new construction, leach field, septic. A retrofit, as we're suggesting here, is about 12.5K. So that's a quick comparison of costs. And as I said at the beginning, one of the criteria in developing this plan is to try to save the town some money. And then this is the same slide, just reminding you for the purpose of tonight's discussion that the first three things on the list here, which as you can see are the are the largest items longer term in terms of how we can solve this problem are the ones that have successfully made their way onto the June town meeting warrant, which, as we all know, is reduced from what we originally had proposed. But given all of the financial constraints of the town and et cetera, this was reduced. We've had a couple discussions with the select board, and we now have 3 articles to address these first 3 items on the agenda. And I think that is my last slide for now. So I will stop there and see if there are additional questions, which we'd be happy to talk about. You've asked some great questions so far, and happy to talk more. Thank you.
Is it fair to say that the 95 Lawrence Road project is basically a mini treatment station?
It is. That's exactly right. And I'll just quick story on that, John, if I may, 2 minutes. When I was working on the plan here, the watershed plan with Kurt and his committee and others, and then all of a sudden I got an email from somebody, I forget who it was from, saying, hey, by the way, the town's going to build a high density affordable housing project in the Duck Creek watershed. Well, I stopped breathing for a couple of minutes and I said, uh-oh, this is a problem. What am I going to do here? I don't want to come out against affordable housing. So of course I called Kurt, we talked about it. And then I found out that the Cape Cod Commission had provided a grant for this project to look at alternative technologies. So I called them and I said, time out. What if we think outside the box here a little bit? And what if I noticed that the police station, the fire station, the elementary school are next door. They're on Title V systems in the Duck Creek watershed, which is the most challenged. You know, what if we team up here? And then what if we bring some neighborhood homes in? We started doing some numbers on this. The consultants working for the town did the calculations. We had a lot of good communication with the affordable housing group in town, including Gary Sorkin and others. And to my delight, we all got on the same page. We said, this is a no-brainer. Let's do the right thing here. Let's promote affordable housing and come up with a solution. So I really can't say enough about this project. I do a ton of 40B affordable housing work around the state. And I can tell you that this will be a rare occasion where town can provide affordable housing and a critical watershed and improve water quality. That just does not happen. So as I've told Kurt and others, not only is it my intent to make this project happen, but I want to make sure the town gets an award for this because it's very unique.
If the town had chosen not to do this, what would be the alternative costs and consequences?
Well, not to do what? You mean provide the neighborhood treatment plant?
Yeah, the cluster had this.
Well, I'm not even sure that they could have gotten the permit because Mass DEP essentially requires a net zero. If they had to go to the state for a permit,
Yep.
it's unlikely they would have gotten it. Now it's possible they had planned the program less than the threshold is 10,000 gallons per day. So if they had planned the program below that, 9,900 gallons per day, they would have tried to sneak under the state threshold, if you will. And I would have bit my tongue, of course, because I'm working for the town and I don't want to come out against the town project. But I would have secretly been biting my tongue hard because this would have been a project in a very wrong place, in my opinion, without the treatment technology. So again, I'm very happy that we didn't go that direction. But to answer your question, I guess, a long way around the barn here, what would have happened is if that project had gotten built at the 9,900 gallons with less treatment, the town would have to pay more to retrofit that later by doing more things in the watershed. And it would have cost you more money. So again, I can't say enough good things about the discussion and cooperation we had between all the various people in town to come up with the right solution.
I'm still confused, if I may interject.
Yeah.
The project has been approved some time ago, but was it approved then without a wastewater treatment plant?
When you say approved, I'm not sure approved by who, because I don't believe they had approval on the wastewater systems at that point.
Did they have approval for the construction of the project?
I don't believe so, because that would have
They did.
required, Kurt, maybe you can,
Let me maybe give a little bit of clarification there. What got approved by the Board of Selectmen was an RFP to look for a developer for the project.
I see.
So the project itself still has to go through all the permitting that would be required for the project, no matter what.
Okay.
So it's still going to need zoning, zoning board of appeals approval. It's still going to need board of health approval. It's still going to need all of the required permits. And with this advanced treatment system involved, it also is going to require a water discharge permit from the state. So so it's not approved in the sense of being able to go forward for construction right at the moment. But what we did flag, as Scott alluded to, was the idea that this project probably wouldn't get approved if it didn't have advanced treatment, and if we weren't able to show an outcome where we could actually reduce nitrogen in the watershed. So this, by tying in the municipal buildings and by tying in part of the neighborhood, and we don't even have to tie part of the neighborhood in right at the first pass at this, just to tying in the elementary school, police station, and fire station gets us at close to zero impact on the watershed. Adding in the neighborhood as well gets us into a fairly significant amount of reduction.
Okay, understood.
Has the project itself been approved by town meeting?
Only the RFP's been approved, and the
Yeah, okay.
this is the cost component here is really the sewage treatment system. The water system was approved by town meeting last year,
Yeah.
and we were able to get a very large MassWorks grant for the water main extension. We've also put in an application for a MassWorks grant for the sewage treatment system. So there's a chance that we could get a substantial amount of this all paid for by a MassWorks grant.
Okay. So essentially if town meeting approves this, what you're doing is clearing an obstacle toward getting the affordable care project going.
Amen. And then we'd have, it's basically a borrowing authorization. So to the extent that we bring in grant funds, to the extent that we can, obviously minimize the cost, we won't be using that full borrowing authorization.
Of course, there won't be any use doing the borrowing if we don't have a project. So
True as well.
any other questions, comments on the whole presentation or any of the 3 articles?
Yes, Scott, I have one question. My apologies for being late. Last week, I forgot to ask you, what was the cost for retrofitting a FAST system?
well, again, the treatment works cost of the technology is about the same. These all range between, let's just say $10,000 and $20,000 for the treatment works, probably $10,000 to $15,000, a better estimate. The retrofit that you're asking about implies what has to happen on the site. And as I mentioned earlier, perhaps before you joined us, we see great variability on that site, and it really depends on structures that are there, water lines, electric lines that might need to get moved. For example, I'm putting in one of these INAs on my property here in Barnstable. I have to move an electric line coming into my property to do it. So that adds another $5K right there. Landscaping. I mentioned one of our customers in Barnstable wants to move an English garden, like high end, like a $20,000 garden. So it depends. It really depends on the ultimate, but the actual treatment cost differential, the marginal cost, is around $12,500.
So the bottom line is, component wise, it's $12,500 for the components,
Right.
aside from any landscaping or moving of electrical lines.
Yes.
And what about all the tanks and the leaching?
Yes.
Is that all the same size, or?
Well, that's as I mentioned earlier, the way we are proposing this to happen in Wellfleet is only when the homeowner wants it to happen. Meaning, a homeowner comes in and says, I want to add 2 bedrooms to my house. I know I have to put a new leach field in. and I know I have to dig up my property, and I know I have to landscape it. I'm going to do that anyways. That's the town's not making me do it. I want to do it. In that case, the town, what we're saying here is that's a good time. When the lot is excavated, when the homeowner has decided, I want to dig up my lot, I want to add a new leach field because I need to, at that time, it's worth putting in the 12.5K treatment device. The other option is a new construction. I want to build a home. I know I have to put a Title V in. I'm already committed to that cost. Of course, I'm going to excavate the property. Yes, I'm going to put a septic tank in. That's all done. Those are sunk costs. What we're talking about here is the marginal cost of adding the 12.5K treatment system. And so that's the program that we're recommending here, as opposed to going into each property and saying, listen, we know you don't want to put an addition on. We know you don't want to build a new home, but we still want you to spend 30 grand to put a new system in. We're not recommending that. In my view, that's too costly, too onerous. That's like a sewer system where you build a town sewer and you say you got to hook up. What I would rather do here, and what I'm proposing is, let's leave it up to the homeowner. Let's make it an incentive program. That's why I met with the Cape and I realtors earlier this week, 8 realtors in the town of Wellfleet, to talk about how do we do this in a way that's acceptable to the homeowner. And what they suggested is, let's do it when they want to excavate their property for either a new home or a retrofit, and then let's give them the money for the additional costs, which is exactly what we're proposing here.
And I'd also point out that with the, roughly 60 systems that are going in, we can get there with this approach and actually meet our threshold nitrogen reduction requirements. So
Over
you don't
30
have to
years,
make it
right.
onerous. You can actually, this system will get us there. Both the option A and option C get us to a 20,500 kilogram per year reduction. So we don't need to be draconian or be any more aggressive to be able to get there, which I think is fantastic. It's just the numbers work out that way. And the other thing I'd add is that there is, Scott, you know a little bit more about this than I, but the enhanced IAs also should allow you to reduce the size of the leach field.
That's right. Yep.
By as much as maybe 50%. So there is potentially some additional cost savings there, and or some significant benefits to the homeowner who may be in a situation like in downtown, in densely populated areas like downtown Wellfleet, where you've got either a well setback issue, a lot line setback issue, a basement or a foundation setback issue. So it gives you a lot more flexibility if your leach field can be 50% smaller.
With the chair's permission, I will just show you what we're proposing for the health regulation if you have 2 or 3
Yeah.
more minutes. Okay, so because your question that you asked is a very good one about, how does this play out in a cost to a homeowner? So, and again, this is proposed. This has not been adopted. I have no doubt in my mind that this will be changed significantly before it comes a regulation. So please look at this as just an introductory. So first of all, 608 at the top of and by the way, we've met with the Board of Health 4 times so far discussing this, and we plan more meetings with them. The first thing on the list, 608, is an existing regulation. This already is in place. And that means that if there's a new system repair or upgrade within 100 feet of a wetland, and I believe it also applies to if you're within 100 feet of a well, that requires the homeowner put in one of these INA systems rated at 19 milligram per liter. Now, going back to your question, the cost of that, the marginal cost of that is probably around the 12.5 to 15K of the treatment device plus whatever the landscaping costs are. That's an existing regulation. That is what we have today. What we are proposing as a change to that, or in addition to that, is the next paragraph, 609. And that is that if you're in that same area and you're going to have to upgrade anyways at your own expense, you as a homeowner, you're already going to have to pay the money. Done deal. Here's the new idea. We have some incentives for you to consider. If you're willing to put in an enhanced INA system, as opposed to a 19 milligram per liter system, we will give you the 12.5K. So you're already putting right there, you're at 12.5K in your pocket compared to the regular INA. As an option, we'll give you an additional bedroom. The realtors group we met with in town thought that was a great idea. And then thirdly, again, working with the affordable housing group in town, another option we could offer is we'll give you an allowance for an accessory dwelling unit if it's an affordable unit to provide the town credit. And then the 610 refers to a broader application, and that is beyond the 100-foot setback, but anywhere within the Wellfleet Harbor system, that we might provide the $12,500 grant and, not or, but and allowance for an additional bedroom. So the idea here is to make this, and I think this is unique, to be honest with you. I've not seen this in other wastewater plans, which mostly are very onerous on the homeowner, taxpayer. Here, we're making it pretty beneficial to the homeowner by providing either the grant opportunity to pay for the system or maybe more density. And as Kurt just said, and he's absolutely right, the other advantage of these new technologies is that you can get a reduction in leach field area. So if you have setback issues, lot area issues, which I know in downtown Wellfleet, much like the area I'm working in Barnstable, 10,000, 8,000 square foot lots, sometimes it's hard to meet the setbacks. So because the system produces less solids, the Board of Health and DEP can provide a waiver to the leach field area up to 25%, in some cases, maybe more than that. So that's another benefit. So that's the regulation that we've got out there we're talking about. We have a lot further to go on this, but if town meeting appropriates the money to provide these subsidies, then we want to get serious with the Board of Health on the language here. And we want to make sure that it provides really good incentives to the homeowner. So I just want to show that to you. Yes.
After the presentation of the planning board, and a homeowner already contacted me who would like to do this.
Scott, being a scientist, just one quick question about the PRB. For other members of the board, this is going in at the parking lots at the foot of Bank Street.
Mhm.
My question is how do you test the results you expect?
How do you test for the results?
Yeah, how do you monitor that you're
Yeah.
getting nitrogen reduction?
Yeah, well, this is currently being done in Eastham and Orleans, and this is the site we're talking about right here, John.
Yeah.
This is that town parking lot. So if you can envision, I don't think I have a map view of this. Let me just see. Maybe I do. Actually, hold on one second here.
Yeah, the road to your left is Bank Street going up to town.
Right, right. I think I
Yeah.
have a map view. Wait a minute.
I think it's all familiar to.
Here we
all-
go. All right, so here we go. Here's a map view. Here's Bank Street, right?
Yeah.
Here's the parking lot. Is it right here?
Yep.
Or is it right here?
Well, there's two of them, but the
right.
one to the bottom is the town
Is-
parking lot.
Okay, so envision that the PRB goes in right along the road, right?
Mhm.
And the groundwater flow is from upper left to lower right into Duck Creek.
Yep.
What you do is you put some wells in on the so-called up gradient side of the PRB, and you put additional groundwater wells in on the down gradient side. So basically inflow and outflow, and you compare the results.
How deep are the wells?
It depends on how deep the PRB is, but we're presuming in this area, from everything we know so far, that it might be on the order of 20 or 30 feet.
Yep, fair enough. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there more questions or discussions, or are we ready to have some motion and some votes?
I have one quick question. What is the technology timeline of improvements on these things? I mean, is this kind of a turning point, like this is a wow moment, or do they continue to get better every year, every 5 years?
The technology on the septic systems?
Yeah, in
Well,
terms
you know,
of encouraging other people to get in on this.
yeah, well, it's a great question. And as I said, I was in a 4-hour meeting today with EPA that concluded at 5 o'clock. And I don't remember the word, but there's actually a Japanese word for this. It's one of their mottos, if you will, with industrial development. And what they basically say is, once we get a really good product and we come into work the next morning, we work on making it better. And meaning that R&D does not stop with approval or success, because you want more approvals and more success. So and that's exactly what's happening in this market. That's why we have these enhanced INAs. John Smith is an example. The guy, he lives out in Martha's Vineyard. He worked for Alcoa for 30 years. He's a wastewater engineer, worked all around the world. He is just continually working at making the system better and better. Right now, he's averaging around 4 or 5 milligrams per liter. And I talk to him regularly, and he says, Scott, forget about 4 or 5. I'm going to get 2 or 3 milligrams per liter. Give me another couple months.
Mm.
And he's basically in agreement with this Japanese principle that you can do better. We're doing very good now. We want to do very, very, very good. And that's exactly what's happening. And it's exciting because there's a number of technologies that are doing this. There's a market for it. We have a huge problem nationally on this issue. We're going to spend literally billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars fixing this problem. So there's a huge market. And fortunately, we have people who are, dedicated to working on it. And so I think it is going to get better and better.
Scott, will you be presenting at town meeting?
If I'm allowed, I
It's
say
a-
that because I don't know what Wellfleet's rules are, but one year in Truro, I had a presentation all prepared, and the moderator expressed that if one person voted against me presenting, that I would not be allowed to, and one person got up and opposed me. So I don't know what the rules are in Wellfleet, but I'm more than happy to be there as long as I don't get kicked out.
Hmm.
And I'll be well behaved, I promise you.
Yeah, the moderator will let Scott present.
Article 19, the enhanced septic system upgrade. You have a motion. Somebody willing to step forward?
I would move that we support this article.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 No? Didn't hear any no's, so he must have all voted aye or didn't vote at all. So call that one approved.
Mhm.
Article 20, the PRB hydrogeological assessment. Is there a motion?
I move we approve it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Another 5-0. And the wastewater mitigation at 95 Lawrence Road cluster. Again, a motion. I'll make the motion this time that we approve that article. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Kurt, I'll let Danny know of our votes.
Thank you all. And like I said, it's the beginning of the conversation, not the end of the conversation. We surely appreciate your support. We really do.
Well, I appreciate your good work. I have to say my own personal ranking of the strength of the articles is 20 first, because that's fairly straightforward, good use of new technology. I really like the ideas around 21. I think I won't say the hardest fight at town meeting, but the hardest project to manage is Article 19 and getting sufficient buy-in on that. I think you've got some good thinking, but that's the one that would most concern me about seeing that it actually gets carried, that it actually makes it to fruition. Scott, thank you very much. I had a couple of questions at all. Well, question not at all, just about Mayo Creek, but I'll follow up on that offline, give you a call.
Very good, John. Happy to do that. Thank you for everybody.
Thanks for your time. That was very helpful. Kurt, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. You can stick around or head off to dinner Up to you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask one last question?
Yes, sir.
I would like to know what Tom Slack's background photo is. I've been trying to figure out the topography.
It's Lake Willoughby in northern Vermont.
Oh, gorgeous. Wow. Green Mountains. Very nice. Thank you.
It's like Lake Luzerne in Switzerland.
Sure is. Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm,
Have a good
Thank
night.
you all very, very much.
mm.
Take care now.
Okay, bye-bye.
Um,
John, I have a question on the warrant, and it's Article 15 about a revetment for Mayo Creek. Are you familiar with that?
oh, I should have probably asked that be part of the discussion. That's what I wanted to talk to.
Mm.
I don't know, are we supposed to be saying something about that?
I don't know.
I'd totally forgotten about, had meant to talk about that and then I totally forgot.
Mm. I would have thought that we might have been asked to render an opinion, but I don't know the details of it at all. Mm.
Can someone look up that article? Oh, wait a minute, I've got something upstairs. I can read the article. I'll be right back.
Mm.
I had thought the proposal on the enhanced septic system was going to be targeted at specific identified problems and fragile areas. But I gathered from the discussion that would have been a whole different level of concern for people within the town. But I was kind of hoping that that's what they were going to do. They pick out some really fragile, some properties in some really fragile areas.
I think the challenge though, isn't it, that you can't force somebody to do it as long as it stays in the family?
Yeah, but I just meant they offer the 12,000.
I think they might have to offer more than that.
Yeah,
Oh,
all right, I'm sorry, that's kind of off the
Yeah, no,
cuff.
I was thinking the same thing, or
Article 15 asks the town to raise and appropriate 50,000 for engineering services to design a revetment for Mayo Creek restoration. That seems to me to be perfectly reasonable. You have to do something like that before you can go get a permit. So
Mhm.
I had intended to talk to Scott about that tomorrow. I should have brought it up earlier. My bad. I worked on the Mayo Creek project for a while, and this seems perfectly reasonable to me. So I would be willing to have NRAB take a position on this, but that's a little bit up to the rest of you.
Is it on the agenda?
No.
I don't think we're supposed to vote on anything technically.
Well, we can add something to an agenda.
Yeah, but not without advertising it.
it seems like it's related to this whole discussion we've had though, John. So if you want to
I
find,
mean, I'm just
information on
telling you, but as a matter of, I'm just playing Helen here. What can I say? That she points out that, if it's not on the agenda for discussion tonight, we're probably not supposed to take a vote on a position on it. And I have a question about that. We're talking about a revetment like behind where the properties are located behind Mayo Creek? Is that what we're talking about?
What they're talking about is where the current outflow from Mayo Creek is. Redesigning that so it could be used for marsh restoration.
A revetment going into where the
Where you cross Mayo Creek now as it enters into the harbor,
right.
the term they're using the term revetment for that. They want to redesign that.
The roadway.
Well, they're not interested so much in the roadway. They're interested in allowing greater tide into Mayo Creek so it can be restored.
Oh, you're talking about, oh, okay. So you're calling it a revetment. I don't know why that seems like,
Relative to Mayo Creek Marsh, it is. Relative to most of us, it's a roadway.
Is that the one that has the drainage pipe with the flap in it to control?
yeah,
Yes.
the flapper,
Yeah.
flapper. So that's what we're talking about, to redesign that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought that was long done and gone. I thought we already voted to approve that a long, long time ago.
I know we brought it up because I went to look at it. 'Cause I didn't understand what it was.
If we have to, John, and you get more clarity on it and we can have a 5-minute meeting at some point to approve
I
it.
guess that's what we I mean, it can't go in the warrant as printed because I got the warrant as printed in my lap right now.
So, yeah, and I don't, you know, put a fly in the ointment here, but it just seems to me that it's not really proper to discuss something that we're not, you know, we didn't tell people what we were gonna discuss.
Okay,
Can't it just be new business? Well, I don't know.
Where is it in the warrant?
Article 15.
All right,
I guess, John, I'm willing to have two motions. One, add it to the agenda, and two, have a vote. And if someone complains, we'll come back and revote it.
yeah, I'm fine. I have no issue with taking a vote on it. It's just whether or not it would be proper. Maybe we could take the vote on it and you can get the answer after the meeting. If we need to have a 5-minute meeting to take the vote again, we can do that.
So I'll make a motion to add a consideration of Article 15 on the Mayo Creek revetment to our agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? And I'll make a motion that we recommend to ATM approval of Article 15. Is there a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
And if there is a grumble, we will revisit it. So now we come to the hard part of the evening. We're trying to put together a package for town meeting to explain each of the two articles for which we have permission on we've got the articles on the town meeting warrant. We seem to have a pretty good consensus of what well, let me step back a second. In order, the way this year's town meeting works is that any documents that we want to have available for the people who attend town meeting at the time they go in has to be given to Rebecca Eldridge Monday. So this is approximately our last shot at it. I get the sense that what we have been reviewing the last meeting or two about the dredging project has, with Laura's most recent suggestions, we basically agree to. Where we're having trouble is the one on the Harbor Survey project. And I've seen some very good writing from Herb and some very good writing from John, laying out a good case. But the problem is that in both cases, well, particularly where what Herb has written, it runs over one page. And what I was hoping to have is a document which was dredging on one side and the Harbor Survey on the other. One of the things that occurred to me is I and others have taken a position of putting some detail around stage 2. Stage 1 is to do the actual survey that we have talked about and we'd need to write an RFP for if this is approved. Stage 2 is a bunch of possible recommendations based on the results from stage 1. And I've been thinking about that, and I'd rather I propose a slightly different point of view. There's been a lot of work done about Wellfleet Harbor over the past few years. There's regular water quality data. There's a lot of information about the shellfish population. The Mass Audubon has done some work on birds, on turtles, on various other critters around. There's Center for Coastal Studies has done some good work on the benthic topography of the harbor. So the one thing that there's been some work ongoing about bait fish, small fish. The one thing that's missing out of this that would be a sort of give a complete picture is to look at the fish population. So what I'm thinking is a better approach will be to use some combination of the good writing from John and Herb, talk about stage 1 as sort of completing the picture, and say for stage 2 that we will write a report based on all of this information, including the new information that we will accumulate. And that report will have recommendations, some of which we may implement ourselves, some of which others may implement. I guess what I like about the idea is it says that this is sort of building a building step by step, and it's not It's not as though we're acting in a volume. And I'm worried that if we say in state, if we talk about specifics of stage 2, it's as though we're saying to the audience, well, we already know what the results are going to be like.
Right, you're assuming that they're going to approve it or something, right?
Well,
Yeah,
we know that if they don't approve it,
there's
we'll
no
go
stage
on to plan
1
B.
or 2.
Yeah, we won't have 1 or 2. Yes, yeah.
Hmm.
I'm betting, my own view, Tom, is I think I would be very surprised and disappointed if the dredging one did not get approved. As you heard, it got approved by the Marina Advisory Committee.
Mhm.
And I thought they would probably be the toughest sell.
You know, the one thing that worries me the most is that if you sit down and read through the warrant, if everyone has received the warrant now,
Mhm.
I think by the time we get to our warrants, people are going to be financially stunned. I mean, there's 240,000 for this and 250 for that, and I don't know. I really hope people are able to think and focus on what we're trying to tell them, and not say, "Oh my God, another 60 grand, huh?" But
I have the same concern, and I think maybe Laura had the same concern, and she said, look, and when we're talking about the dredging, we better pound the table that if this works, it's a fairly small investment. If it works, it saves big bucks.
right.
So assuming that what our final handout is and what I say at town meeting makes that point, I think after having looked at a bunch of big numbers, 25 is going to look small. The 60K is a tough one.
Yeah.
That's the hardest sell. And I think that's why we all have spent, I think we probably all agree on that. And that's why we spent so much time trying to figure out how to present it.
Well, one thing I would suggest is that, you know, when people are walking into town meeting, if they get a handout, if it needs to be very concise and to the point, a couple of paragraphs maybe. You know, if we get into a long discussion, they're not going to read it.
Yeah, I think it has.
You need an
that's why
elevator
I
speech.
like the 1-page idea.
Yeah.
And I think what John wrote and what Herb wrote make a good case. All I have to do is figure out how to fit it into 1 page. And frankly, condensing the stage 2 idea also saves space. So
Make it bullet points, just bulleted points.
yeah. Well, I think some of the language that you and John have used, I will copy, keep. It needs a little poetry. It doesn't need just bullet points.
Mhm.
Needs some pounding of the table and waving of flags. And I think you've done that. Problem is, we're not going to be able to vote on a final version. I'll take a look at what we have and send you out a copy over the weekend, and you can comment back. But I suppose the only vote we can take is to approve what we had after Laura's corrections for the dredging, and to authorize me to put together a final version for the harbor survey. You have a, John, do you have a picture of a fish I could use?
Picture of a fish?
A stripe, like a striped bass?
Yeah, I've got lots of pictures of fish. I have a picture of a striped bass.
I'll try to tack that on too.
Yeah, so here's.
This is what we're dealing with, guys. This is striper.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. You
I
gotta
think that there's,
get their attention right away.
I thought that the thought, you definitely, you don't want people's eyes are gonna be glazing over. You want to give them something really quick and concise. I thought getting it down to a front and a back on the same page was a good idea. And now that I think about it, it's probably not. But I gotta say too, that I don't know that it's necessarily a good idea to have a front page with one article and a back page with another article, if that's what you were thinking about doing.
That's what I was thinking about doing.
Yeah, I don't know that that's a good idea. I don't know why, but for some reason, when people go to these meetings and they get the articles, they get them one by one. I don't know. Maybe it's just something I got in my head that that's the way I assumed it was going to be.
I could do it either way.
Yeah, well, I guess it's worth some thought. I mean, I don't, because all you're really doing by putting one on the front and one on the back is saying.
What I could do is do as you suggest, one sheet for each project, and then I could have a picture of a blue and a striper on the back of one, and then the other one I think I should be able to find some sort of picture of Wellfleet Harbor, and
I've prepared documents over the years with a bunch of pictures of all sorts of things like that. Like I took an aerial shot of the whole harbor in a plane when I first got here years ago. But then again, that's going to be dated now because of all the work they did over by the Flash House. But
but that's not no one's going to worry about that.
yeah, all right. Well, I mean, I've got lots of pictures, and it's just a
Take a look
picture.
at what you got.
Well, we
I've
can,
got a lot of
I've
people-
got some stuff too. I've got a picture of the dredge out there. Maybe that would.
Well, here's the thing, the pictures are fine, but I agree with the concept that maybe with the harbor study, we need to condense that, what I had done, it's like a page and a half right now in 12 fonts. And I'd like to keep it at 12 font because I think that it's just
Easier to read, yeah.
easier to read. And I think that if we could agree, that we could probably vote on this tonight. If the contents of what's in there right now, we all agree that there's nothing wrong with any of it. I didn't know that we were under a deadline for today's meeting to get this done so that it could be handed on a Monday. I thought we were going to be able to discuss it, change it, and then do it.
Yeah.
So however, we could simply approve. I mean, I sent around a draft that was cut and pasted from, I guess, what Herb wrote and what I wrote or what we came up with. And I don't know, but we could vote to approve all of the language in that document to be modified by you as you see fit, to cut things that need to be cut so that it fits on one page. Is that proper?
That seems reasonable, John.
So we could approve it, so
Yeah.
there's nothing in there that's wrong. And other than dolling it up is what we're talking about, to make it, have a couple of fish pictures, and I'll be glad to help you with that we have something that will fit on one page, that will contain the basic bullet points. But I got to tell you, here's the driving home point. The way we're going to get it passed is to just keep hammering on the fact that what we're talking about is there's a couple of things. First of all, the recommendations are going to come out of the report. It's a 12-month long study, which is, I still think $60,000 is reasonable for that. And that's, according to a few people that do these kind of things for a living, it is very reasonable. And you just got to keep hammering $60,000 compared to 7.7 million just for shellfishing, is what we do now. And the marina, everything to do with the harbor. Wellfleet wouldn't be Wellfleet without the harbor. And there's so many uses in the harbor that those are the kind of things that you need to tell people about. I thought that we would have an opportunity at the town meeting to stand up and kind of explain that. But it could be in, in the bullet point, just the dollar amounts need to be in there with what we're looking to protect. And if that point gets made, I don't see how we fail with getting this across the finish line.
Partly that's why I wanted this to end up with the door open to an action plan. In other words, we're going to take this study plus all the others that are going on and make recommendations for what we need to do to continue to enhance and manage Wellfleet Harbor. I think one of the points I would make is that this town depends on the harbor. This town is built around it. I think, I can't remember whether it was you, John, or maybe Herb put it out there. There's about 300 people making money off shellfishing.
Yeah, correct. Nancy sent me that earlier today.
Oh, that was from Nancy.
Yeah, there was 300 people. She sent me that document, which is just honestly, I read through as much of it as I could, and there was a bunch of numbers in there that were very helpful. And she told me that, yeah, 300 people earn their living, and that's modest if you ask me.
That's people who earn their living. That's not the children of the family who.
Yeah, or the people that they buy their equipment from, or all the ancillary stuff that they depend on. And if that's 10% of the population of the town, that's a number. It's a sort of, so that one stood out to you. Every point we can make bullet points like that are what are going to convince people that it's going to rhyme with somebody. Somebody's going to say, okay, you're right. And so,
So I think.
And again, I'm sorry that I thought we were going to have another meeting to be able to.
Well, I just found out yesterday what the problem is.
I mean, I'm comfortable with. I've been over it a few times. I think no matter what happens, when it comes down to the final vote, somebody's going to need to get up there at town meeting, and I would really hope it's not me, but somebody needs to get up at town meeting and explain that these are the reasons. That this is a resource that needs to be protected. The Division of Marine Fisheries 50 years ago recommended this be done every 10 years, and it hasn't been. So we need to do it. And the only thing I can think of is when you think of the harbor being the heartbeat of the town, well, you get a heart exam as you get older. I mean, you go see your doctor regularly. It's like a checkup. This is a harbor.
Nice way to put it.
We need a new baseline.
I don't like the argument, John, that it's been 50 years and so we better catch up, because the counter to that is, well, it's been 50 years and we haven't done this, and things are pretty good shape. So
But who knows?
The case we have to make is not that it's been 50 years, but that we think this ought to be done because it'll open new windows, open new opportunities.
I think you have to make the
How do
point.
we
that you have-
Sorry. I was just gonna say, how do you manage the harbor if you don't know what's in it?
Yeah. How do you take care of it? You can't manage it properly.
No,
So-
you have to, I really like to get the point in there. You're probably only going to have one chance to do this right. You really have to do it. By the way, in terms of things going well for so many years, New York Harbor lost its oyster, which was its prime industry, in 2 years, in the late 20s. It tipped from being a major activity in the New York area to zero in 2 years when it hit that tipping point, when the water hit that tipping
We're
point.
talking about like the 1800s or something, right?
Oh, I'm talking about 1920s.
Really?
It was dominant New York as an
Okay.
industry through the 19th century, still continuing strong into the 20th century. And then that tipping point, the water quality occurred in the late 1920s, and over a matter of 2 years, the entire industry disappeared. So this is essential that the town does this.
All right, well, maybe one of the bullet points, if we're gonna do it, I mean, it sounds like we're thinking about things that you want to drive home, is to point out to people, think about the folks that you know that make their living, or one way or the other, depend on the harbor. And it's just an open-ended statement. It's a quick little sentence, who do you know that makes their living or depends on Wellfleet Harbor? And then move on to the next bullet point. I mean, I'm trying to think of a way to make, it's hard to make a one piece of paper convince somebody. Somebody's going to need to explain it to them. However, if there's 7 or 8 or 10 strong points in a row, rather than, I agree, phase 1, phase 2, you just want to basically make sure that we get this particular study done at this particular time to make sure that our harbor is in good shape and we're on the right track with it.
Well, can't we go back to what you said initially, John, and say everyone seems to agree with what's been presented so far, and then letting John Reel go ahead and formulate the final document, and then let us all look it over and approve, or add to it, or whatever.
I'm just listening to this discussion. I think John Dwayne and Herb have both, in a sense, taken the leadership in putting a more convincing document together. Are either you, John, are you willing to have a go at the next draft rather than me?
Well, yes, well, just to give me a deadline. So what are we talking about here? So are you what you want? What we're talking about, I mean, I could make a simple motion to condense what we currently have in the letter that I distributed before to everybody into one simple bullet page document and have it presentable. So
Well,
you want something that can be given to Rebecca on Monday, is it right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, are people comfortable with a document for each article, which may run more than just a front page? That may go some to the back page.
I don't
I
know.
try and keep it tight, but
Keep it 1 page.
I think you should keep it to 1 page. I think
Keep it
that's,
1 page.
But have two separate pages.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, not just two, yeah. Well, so which ones are we actually, which ones are we writing letters of support for people to have? Just the harbor study and the dredging, is that right?
Those are
Yeah.
those are only
Those are the only 2 articles we have.
those are the only
So
2
that's
articles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they should be separate. And I think that both of them should be 1 page, very short and sweet.
Yep.
You want to have
that's
a
a
crack
start,
at
why it's a good thing for them.
Yeah, I'll take it, Herb, if you want to work with me on that, I would love to, see what we can come up with.
Sure, John.
You good with the computer going back and forth with email and documents and playing with them and stuff?
Yes.
All right,
You want to do a draft and send it to me, and I'll look at it and get it back to you?
all right. So let me try to condense that one that everybody did see, the one that I sent around that was like a combination of.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of good stuff in there, John. I'd start with that and just build on it a bit.
Okay, so the document I sent around to everybody today, nothing's gonna be new, I don't think. I'll try to come up with some bullet points out of that and with Herb's help and make it look good on 1 page.
Just so everyone's clear, the 2 documents we're talking about are to support the 2 articles that we have. It's Article 25 and 26. The vote we took on Mayo Creek, all that it happens to with that is I will inform Danny Silverman, who is the moderator, and when that article comes up in front of town meeting, he will say, this was approved by NRAB also 5-0.
Recommended, right?
Recommended, right, not approved, recommended. That's the correct language. So it's, there's nothing more that as a group we need to do about the vote we took on Mayo Creek or any of the votes that we took about the wastewater committee work.
Okay. Well, I do like whoever changed it to the Wellfleet Harbor survey. That was a good idea instead of a study, because if it's a survey, it's a survey.
Okay. The last item on our agenda is that we have the minutes of our previous meeting on May 19th. And I have a piece of paper around here someplace that has them. Here, I've got the minutes. Have you had a chance to review those minutes? And if so, are there any?
I reviewed them because I sent them back with some typos corrected.
Yes, okay. I
They're
will,
fine by me.
I will include, yeah, I see one here that says SAP Abd Conscom have supported rather than and. Are there any other corrections besides the ones that Laura sent to me, which will be the basis of my submission to town hall?
I
If
didn't
not,
see it.
motion to accept, please.
Motion to accept.
Second,
Second,
all in favor? Unanimous. I have one little personal thing. A week from yesterday, I'm having some minor surgery. It's cataracts in my right eye. Linda and I love birding, and I'm having more and more time getting a clear view of the birds. And I've talked to other bird watchers, and they say we've had cataract surgery. They say it works. So I assume
You can see them again.
there's 10 days from the surgery to ATM, and I assume I'll be in a sufficiently recovered that I'll be able to present the two articles and make a verbal case for them. But if not, I may need to ask for volunteers to do the role for me. I will give you as much notice as I can, plenty of notice. The town meeting is until the 26th. So that's 10 days. I'm told the recovery from this surgery is normally pretty fast, so
You should be fine, John, I would
I
think.
should, I'm not concerned, but you never know, so I just alert you.
my husband just had one done and it was not bad at all, John.
Okay. Any,
Yeah,
is
I'm
it gonna
scheduled
work?
for
Can you
November.
see better?
He can see better too.
Hallelujah.
I just want to give you the heads up that the definition of minor surgery is surgery on somebody else.
Love it.
Surgery on a minor.
You're not even fully out, at least he wasn't, so.
Okay, guys, good meeting, and I think it was an interesting discussion, and I think Kurt's got a tough, Kurt and Scott have a tough job to explain it all. They're good projects, but I think
Yeah.
it's going to be a bit of a tough sell. We set to go?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I said one point for
apologize.
Laura.
I'll apologize for getting the date wrong today, but the good news is now I've got Friday clear, so I can work on that document.
Herb, you had a question, comment?
Well, just a comment from Laura and I were planning to get together tomorrow to work on a pond document. Laura, can we put that off if I'm gonna be reading reviews?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll cancel the Zoom, and I actually sent you an outline that we can fiddle with at our leisure from our
Okay,
things.
what do you like next week? Anytime we could do it someday next week?
I'll look. I don't even know off the top of my head.
All right, look at your calendar next week
No problem. Yep,
and then see if you can send me something.
sounds good.
Thanks to both of you for taking the
Thanks,
initiative.
Laura.
I appreciate that. One of the things, I guess the meeting after ATM, I want to take a look at our charter. I think I mentioned that once. The word pond does not appear in the charter. That didn't stop us from doing a ponds plan anyway. But I think we ought to officialize that. And I'd like to go back to the select board with a revised charter. But that's not until after ATM. So unless something urgent comes up, we won't meet again until after the town meeting. So
Okay,
good evening to all of you, and enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks
Thanks.
for your participation.
Okay,
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.